If your Illinois professional license could become suspended due to unpaid Illinois income tax, I'm going to show you how to stop that from happening, and this video starts now. If you want to stop any problem with the IRS, we'll show you our best insider tips, how-to guides, and little-known secrets to get there fast. Before we jump in, go ahead and click that subscribe button so you never miss another video to protect yourself and your bank account from the IRS. Let's go. In this video, we're going to talk about handling and dealing with the Illinois Department of Revenue, particularly as it relates to professional licenses. Before we get started, I would love to have you subscribe to our channel, Real Talk with Tax Law Offices. And when you do, hit the bell icon so you never miss any notifications. While you're at it, please hit the like button for this video. At Tax Law Offices, we've noticed that in Illinois, with the Department of Revenue, we're getting more and more calls as Illinois has increased its pursuit of tax collection. The state of Illinois has actually increased its tax collection enforcement activity. More and more, we're noticing that they are staffing up. They're adding staff, but they're also adding departments. One particular department that they've added is their outside collections management. And what's happening here is that Illinois is actually referring a lot of its collection cases to outside collectors, companies like Harris and GC and Harvard. And you may have seen those names around already. But actually the outside collections and dealing with them is going to have to be the subject of another video, and we will cover that another time. Today we're going to focus on how people with professional licenses deal with the Illinois Department of Revenue and the Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. This particular department that we'll abbreviate with DFPR is actually the regulating body that issues, maintains, and governs most professional licensing in the state of Illinois. So now at our company, Tax Law Offices, we're actually seeing wave after wave of licensed Illinois professionals whose livelihoods are threatened because they are about to lose their license. Their license is going to be suspended or possibly even revoked. All right, that's bad news. So now, unfortunately, there's also a little bit more bad news, which is the longer one of those licensees waits or fails to take action to deal with the situation, the worse the problem gets. The longer it takes, the more complex it gets. But see, there's also good news, which is there is always a way to fix or correct the problem. If the license is going to be suspended, there is always a way that it can be made active. If the license is going to be revoked, there's always a way for it to become reinstated if it's related to non-payment or delinquent payment of tax. So let's get into it. So who are we talking about here? So DFPR, they're actually the regulating body for any number of professional licensees. And I mean, it crosses all sorts of genres of industries, architecture and dentistry, loan brokers, funeral homes, and public accounting. And for sure, which is our number one group of clients that we see for these type of problems, real estate professionals, real estate agents, and real estate brokers. But all of those licensees know who they are, and they know who, actually IDFPR, that's the long acronym. They know who that department is, and they know that that is the pathway for their licensing. Fortunately, there's also a bit of a lead time in learning when you're having tax problems that could threaten your license. So now the tax problems, it comes as no secret. That's from a completely different Department of Revenue. But what they will do is they will send notices, they'll send invoices, they'll send bills and ongoing communication to let a licensee know that there's delinquent tax, that the tax is seriously delinquent, and possibly that your licensing could be affected, suspended, or even revoked. There's enough lead time, there's enough warning. But see, this is what happens. Anyone facing the problem of significant unpaid tax liability, or they have unfiled tax returns, or maybe their business records aren't intact, maybe there was a fire, maybe there was a flood, or maybe, like most small business owners, keeping up with your accounting, tracking your income expense, it's just a bit of a challenge. Say, for example, that you are in the barber or beauty industry. Most of your time isn't spent on doing the books. It's honing your craft and being on your feet doing that sort of work. If you're a real estate professional, you're chasing leads, you're trying to land a sale, you're trying to make sure that you get the clear to close. You have so much to do that it's very hard to keep up with books and records. So we know that when those notices come in from the state government about unpaid tax or unfiled tax return, so listen, we get it, we know how it is. It's extremely intimidating. So now couple that when the real trouble starts, when a licensee, let's just, for the rest of this video, let's just focus on real estate agents. When that agent receives the notice from the Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, it looks a lot like a court document. And if you weren't intimidated already, you become much more intimidated when you see a court docket with your name and your license number and words that are really unsettling, like suspension, like 60 days. So now once that notice of hearing, that first notice comes in from DFPR, it gives instructions. It's a little hard to read. It's a little hard to decipher sometimes because you're looking at Illinois statutes, code sections. It's legal language. It's hard for someone who's in one of these industries to read and be able to tell just what to do. Earlier in the video, I mentioned the bad news that the longer you wait, the more complex, the more difficult the remedy becomes. And that's true. So even if you're looking at an intimidating notice that threatens your license, just remember, think about how intimidating it's going to be the next notice that you receive. It's very much like an ostrich putting its head in the sand. That doesn't mean that the problem is going to go away. Before you receive an order for the suspension of your license, or if you have already received an order for the suspension of your license, this is what I want you to do. I want you to take a look at that order, and I want you to circle a couple of things. One, it's going to tell you that you have 60 days to act. And within that 60 days, it gives you the opportunity to either resolve payment of the tax liability with the Department of Revenue or to request a hearing with DFPR. Like I said, circle that 60 days and let's count exactly 60 days and let's mark that date on your calendar. It's a very important date because after that 60 days expires, if you have not taken action, the problem gets much more complex. It gets much worse. If you think that the process has been unfair or you need to challenge that threatened suspension or even worse, threatened revocation of your license, then you do have the right to request a hearing with the Department of Professional Regulations. You do have the right to do that. Now, I'm going to warn you that you will have to make that protest, that appeal, that challenge, you're going to have to work through an attorney. So it's possible to do that, but again, remember what I said is that the longer you wait, things happen, the more complex it gets, the more expensive. So if you receive this notice and your 60-day option includes making that challenge, just remember you're going to have to do that through an attorney. Okay. The other option is to satisfy or resolve your tax liability with the Department of Revenue. So we're going to focus on that. Resolving or satisfying that tax liability with Illinois Department of Revenue does not necessarily mean full payment right here, right now, in order to get your license back. We all live in the real world, And the way that the procedures with Department of Revenue have been developed over the years, Illinois realizes that if your license has been threatened, if it has been suspended, and certainly if you are already in tax trouble, then it's going to be very difficult to fully pay the tax before you can get your license back. So like I said, you do have a few options there. Some of those options may include an installment agreement, possibly a redetermination of the tax liability, even an offer in compromise. In some cases, it can include a discharge of tax in bankruptcy if the taxes are eligible for discharge. So the scope of how to achieve any of those options, installment agreement, offer and compromise, that the scope of that is too big for this video, but it's just important for you to know that those are options that will remedy the unpaid tax liability to allow reactivation or reinstatement, or in some cases, the avoidance of suspension of your license. What we do with our clients, just case after case, not all the time, but a lot of time, is that we actually have the Department of Revenue Board of Appeals become involved in the case. And particularly, we ask that Board of Appeals for a temporary restraining order against Illinois for taking any further action, and also from any other regulatory body, including DFPR, from taking any further action related to the collection of tax. There's three things that we want in particular. One, again, we want that temporary restraining order issued right away to stop any further collection enforcement. Obviously, the suspension of a professional license is definitely collection enforcement. The second thing, we want the Board of Appeals to communicate that restraining order, that TRO. We want them to communicate that to all of the departments involved. So then that third thing is that we want to make sure that there is a speedy review of your request for that option to fully satisfy the tax. Obviously, if you're seeking some sort of payment alternative, alternative to just fully paying the tax liability all at once, then there's going to have to be some financial analysis. I mean, that only makes sense. And for anybody facing this problem, you already know that. So then as soon as you see this problem developing, one thing that you should begin to work on or begin to be knowledgeable of or mindful of is that you're going to have to start putting together records so that you can make a competent financial proposal to the state for one of those alternatives, whether it's an installment agreement or offer and compromise, whatever it may be. You're going to have to put together a financial proposal. It's going to have to be clear, competent, and very well documented so that it can actually have that speedy and timely review. Whether you hire a firm like ours to do it, or whether you try to do it yourself. I mean, either way, just again, be mindful that you're going to have to put some information together. You're going to have to make a little effort in getting to that mountaintop. You're going to have to make some efforts in putting together that proposal to satisfy that liability. Once that proposal is, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, it's all packaged up and ready, we're going to send that out to the Board of Appeals for their review. And when all goes well, then that interim arrangement is what satisfies the tax liability for the purposes of the Department of Revenue, who will then communicate to the Department of Finance and Professional Regulation that you have satisfied your tax. And that is at the point where you can either stop that suspension or you can request a reactivation of a suspended license. Like I said, the longer you wait, the more complex it becomes, and you may have to deal with layer after layer of procedure with these multiple departments there in Illinois. But again, if you've received that threat of your professional license and this is your livelihood, well, then you still have to go through that door. So don't be afraid of it. Take some action and don't delay, because remember, the longer you wait, the harder it is. So I hope that gives you a framework, a good idea of the steps and layers that are required to either avoid a suspension of your license or a worst case scenario to reactivate a suspended license. So again, I hope this helps. And don't forget, please subscribe to the video. There's a link below this video. And while you're at it, you remember to hit the bell on the subscribe so that you get instant notifications of the next video. And while you're at it, please like this video. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next video.